you going to be a dinosaur, or are you going to be able to move and be futuristic and future focused? If you're struggling, don't let your pride get in the way. Make sure you do something to take care of yourself. Train your employees so well that they can leave, and treat them so well that they don't. Talking about your mental health was not necessarily a common thing in our household growing up. And it was not a negative thing. It wasn't like, dismissed. It just wasn't talked about. I put a lot of emphasis on the word human. We are human beings. We are all unique and different. If we're going to talk about DEI and be inclusive, how can you not look at the whole human being? I didn't know what was happening. Why am I thinking this way? What's happening to me? Welcome to other people's worlds. Now you understand when people say they're struggling mentally, they're not just having a bad day because they're hungover.
All right, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Heart and Hustle podcast. Today, we've got a brand new episode in our HR Heroes series, and I'm really excited to bring my guest to the table today because, Felipe, I've been following along with your LinkedIn journey for quite some time. The work that you're doing in the overall workplace wellness space, the work that you're doing in talking about company culture, and your just overall stance as an HR leader is incredibly interesting to me, so I'm glad to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Keenan. You and I met, I feel like maybe a year and a half ago. I was just impressed with what you're doing. And, for me, workplace wellness, workplace culture, just the workplace in general is something I've been very passionate about because we spend so much time there. And it makes sense to make sure that the experience is positive for all and beneficial to the company. That's
exactly right. So as I look at your history, right, you were a former vice president of human resources and organizational development at Signal Financial Federal Credit Union, and you're currently an executive human resources business partner. And some of the stuff you're doing at Cricket Media is incredible. But all the other work that you're doing, talking about the Workplace Wellness Collective, why are so many of these things important to you when it comes to workplace culture and just wellness in general?
That's a great question, Keenan. For me, early on, I got taught by Hyatt Hotels how a good workplace culture can be built and sustainable as the company grows. And Hyatt's not a small company. They're a huge company. And to see a company that large really put that much value into the employee experience and culture was really eye-opening. But it also taught me on how to do it right and how it's always evolving. And so from that experience, I was able to experience some really, really challenging cultures and some amazing cultures, and some that had cultures that was like the best kept secret no one knew about. And what I started realizing was there's so many things that apply to all of us. Regardless of our industry, of our jobs, the workplace culture is very common in all areas. And it might be unique to each company because of the people that are in it, but the value of providing people the insights that I've learned over the years, because people helped me, people taught me, Hyatt, mentors, great managers showed me how to do things the right way. And for me, I just want to pass that knowledge on now. I feel like I've been able to benefit from it, gain from it. Why am I being selfish? I want to pass it on to others so they don't have to struggle the way others have in the past. And with workplace wellness, it applies not just in the workplace, it benefits you in the home. And so for me, focusing on everything that helps us achieve our goals, help us be more productive at work, and help us be healthier physically, mentally, and financially is ideally the goal.
I think the workplace wellness, I would say, wave that we've been seeing over the last couple of years is really all about the common experience of life in general. And the last couple of years have been incredibly tough for so many people. I mean, 2024 from a layoffs perspective was huge. There were so many numbers of people who lost their jobs and it really created an uncertainty in their life. And now something that I thought was really interesting is a question that kind of gets to the underlying framework or foundation of how are you doing? You posted something on LinkedIn and said over 200 million views and over 40,000 comments, all because of 4 simple words. How is everybody doing? Elmo hopped on X the other day and asked that simple question, how is everybody doing? And the results of people coming back and commenting and saying how they were doing were kind of substantial. Why don't you give us a little bit of kind of an understanding about that post that you saw and why that question of how is everybody doing was so important?
That post struck me because of how simple the question was and how often, think about how often we walk by somebody And whether we ask the question or they ask the question, hey, how you doing? And think about it. How often do you actually stop and wait for the response? Most of the time, we keep on walking and someone's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, how are you? Oh, I'm good. And that's it. But when you ask that question with meaning, I always tell people, add the word really to that question. How are you really doing? It changes the tone dramatically. And so for me, when I saw the response to me, it sent a few messages. One, that people are struggling, hands down. All of us at different levels, different experiences, we all have our struggles. But two, it was great to see how vulnerable people are willing to be. Look, I'm a proud Latino man who was raised by Latino parents. Talking about your mental health was not necessarily a common thing in our household growing up. And it was not a negative thing. It wasn't like, dismissed. It just wasn't talked about. But when you have somebody who actually cares enough and impacts that question, it opens up your eyes to thinking, wow, talking about it actually does help. And so having people be more vulnerable, sharing and normalizing the conversation around that, I thought was so important. And so for me, it was just kind of opening people's eyes, saying, hey, if you're struggling, don't let your pride get in the way. Make sure you do something to take care of yourself, because honestly, those that look up to you, whether they're kids, employees, friends, they're going to probably follow your lead if they look up to you. And if you address it, they're going to say, oh, that's how you address those things, versus hiding it, not talking about it, and acting like it's not a problem.
So, how are you doing really in 2024? How's the year starting off for you?
2024 has been a unique year for me, I'll be honest. It's been one of those things where 2023 brought a lot of struggles. My wife went through a stroke. It was, thank God she's okay. She's been still recovering and healing, but she was one of the fortunate ones that it didn't impede her permanently. She has no long-lasting effects per se. But that was a huge eye-opening moment there, because things happen in our life outside of work. And to say that they don't impact us is a lie. They impact us. How much they impact us, that's the difference. And sometimes you have employers that want to know how you're doing, but sometimes you have an employer that wants to know how you're doing, but they might use it against you later on. So people are fearful about sharing how they're really doing with especially their manager, if they don't trust them. Because maybe in the past, when you have trusted them, they've thrown it back in your face. So for me, that was very eye-opening, because I saw a lot of people and understood how much the struggles do impact it, and asking someone how they're doing and providing resources to help them get through it is so important. So for me, I leaned on friends and family that you really know who your friends are when you need them. You really understand who cares about you as a human being, who reaches out to you, who comes by to check on you without even asking. I just came by, I just wanted to see how you're doing. And that's the thing, you really realize who really cares. So for me, having that support from family and friends was instrumental for my wife and I to get through this, especially her, because it was a long battle. But and then there were some work challenges. I left Signal, and that was something that they're going through a lot of changes right now, and it was an opportunity for me to explore new opportunities, which is exciting. And I will be honest, as exciting as it is to have an opportunity to explore new ventures, this opportunity with Cricket has been so exciting. They are in a state of growth. They have opportunities where they can enhance and improve things, and to be a part of something like that is so exciting. But I'm not gonna lie, Cricket is something that, if it works out, I'm all in. But I have the opportunity now to look at jobs in other industries that I never considered. Take my time to really evaluate, hey, do their mission and values align with mine? And so being able to have that opportunity to really do that, look at companies, research them, and find one that really resonates with me and allows me to do what I do best and be a part of something exciting and meaningful. So to answer your question in the short version, I'm doing well, taking it day by day. And sometimes there's larger struggles than others, because sometimes you have other family issues that I'm not gonna get into right now that pop in health-wise that add more challenges. And so you pray, you stay strong, and you lean on people when you need to.
Do you feel like your personal experiences have given you a different perspective on kind of the amount of energy and I would say, percentage of you as a whole person that you put into work, recognizing that there are other things that are so much more important out there?
Absolutely, 100%. The title human resources, I don't take lightly. I put a lot of emphasis on the word human. We are human beings. We are all unique and different. if we're going to talk about DEI and be inclusive, how can you not look at the whole human being? Now, are there time and places for things in the workplace? Absolutely. But what that means is there is a time and place to talk about the human being that works there and how are they doing and how can we support them. And the word support, let me just say this. A wise person told me one time, what does support look like to you? And I gave them my answer, and they're like, all right, let me give you a visual of what support really looks like to me. If somebody was drowning and they were asking for help, what kind of support do you think they would appreciate more? Me saying, come on, swim, you can do it, come on. Or, hey, here's a life raft, grab it, hold on to it, I'm going to pull you in. The action level of support means something. When you support somebody, you're not just verbally regurgitating information, you're actually taking action. You're actually finding out what you can do. Sometimes people don't know what to do and they have to ask, and that's fine. But having that support in the workplace is huge because, look, we are not going to understand what someone's going through unless we go through it ourselves. And honestly, I don't want to go through what everyone goes through because they're going through a lot of struggles. I'd rather try to seek to understand than be understood. And with that, I want to make sure that people talk and feel safe psychologically, because if they're not, back to that manager that throws things back in your face, you're not going to share. You're not going to be fully transparent, and you're not going to bring your full, complete self to the workplace. Now, I always say, bringing your authentic self to the workplace comes with a caveat. You got to be appropriate. You got to be professional. You got to respect the culture. There are things that I will say in my house that I would never say at work, and vice versa, actually. So, you have to read the room and make sure you're appropriate for the place. But bringing your authentic self to the workplace, I think, is important because you tap into different strengths that employees have. You tap into unique things that they can bring that most companies don't even want to know about. But you're missing out on an opportunity to make your company more successful by learning and adapting to what your employees are doing in day-to-day life.
Do you think that the experience of the pandemic especially was something that triggered this new leadership style that is so necessary for the sustainability of these businesses? I think about, like, in a pre-pandemic world, everybody was feeling, I would say, pushed down and almost kind of burnt out from work, but they recognized that this was a part of a necessary evil, if you will, if I was going to provide for my family. Then the pandemic occurred, and we saw so many changes in the work union of our lives and how we show up every single day. And now that we're on the other side of the pandemic, everybody's almost got a taste of what a true form of work-life balance and prioritizing our family over work kind of really looked like. And now that we're seeing a shift back into, I would say, the pre-pandemic workforce style, if you will, do you feel like that's creating like a subconscious like rub with a lot of people?
Absolutely. The cat is out of the bag. You can't put it back in there. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that having progress in the world, every generation has brought a level of, new intervention, if you will, into the workplace or a new step in the evolution of the workplace. Hybrid work is the next logical step, reality. And there are a lot of companies that allow individuals to work remotely sometimes, or certain teams. But what the pandemic did was it opened up our eyes to say two things. One, all those leaders that were hesitant because they didn't understand remote work, guess what? They had to do it. And boy, wow, how understanding were they once they actually did it? Again, why do we have to wait to actually do it to try to understand? So that made them understand it. They also understood what it's like to deal with mental health issues during the pandemic. And a lot of people had a new thing. They didn't know what was happening. Why am I thinking this way? What's happening to me? Welcome to other people's worlds. Now you understand when people say they're struggling mentally, they're not just having a bad day because they're hungover. They are seriously have a mental challenge that they're dealing with, that they struggle with it. Lucky for you that you don't have to until the pandemic hit, maybe. So that, to me, what it opened up to the strong leaders out there that were not old school, that were not set in their ways, that were open to listening to new ways of doing things and trying them out, are the ones that are, I think, being successful and attractive. Because the reality is, look, fully remote can be great, but you're missing a factor there. And being fully on site can be great, but you're missing a factor there. The hybrid allows that flexibility. We had employees that wanted to work 5 days in the office. We had some that preferred to work remotely. Majority of them liked the mix. They liked interacting with employees. Did they need to see everyone every single day? No. But having that consistent weekly interactions, that added value. So for a company to be successful right now, I think they have to really open their eyes and realize, are you going to be a dinosaur, or are you going to be able to move and be futuristic and future focused and look at the benefits of what you might be offering? Because the reality is there are a lot of frontline jobs out there that you can't do this with. And we got to respect those frontline workers that are doing this, especially as the shift happens. There's a benefit to be able to work hybrid or remote. Those that choose to be the front line, they're going out there, and during the pandemic, they put themselves at risk. But now they pay for more gas, more time to commute, struggles of getting ready earlier, getting home later. All those things play into effect. So if we can do them, why not? I don't want to be an employer that says, we're just not doing it because. No, give me a valid reason so I can understand.
And it almost seems like now is the perfect time for organizations to really start leaning into employee engagement, to be able to learn about what are the preferences of my employee base. Because last week I created a piece of content on LinkedIn about the work from home research group. So it's actually founded or ran by a Harvard or a Stanford economist named Nick Bloom. So excuse me for being off the top of my head here. But he was talking about, they did a survey of over 4,000 employees, right? And they found that the preferences of work from home or work in the office were really interesting because of the preference split. They've said that a majority of workers said they want to work in the office because they like the engagement and the collaboration. The second half of the workers said that they would like to be fully remote. And so when it comes down to looking at those two demographics, it really means in order to create a workforce that is cohesive, you have to listen to both sides and create a hybrid model. And so something interesting that they found as well was out of those 4,000 employees that were surveyed, they said 2.3 days of work from home was the right balance for their mental health. And 2.5 days working in the office was the appropriate balance for their physical health, which is really interesting. But it seems like a lot of employers are either taking the stance of we are in the office every single day or we are fully remote. And maybe that's not the best answer for kind of what the preferences of the modern day workforce look like.
Yeah, I mean, look, my last employer, they had some people on the board of directors that were very old school. Very, they were called the dinosaurs because they were set in their ways and they didn't understand. And when people don't understand, look, when I understand, I research. If I don't understand something, well, let me understand it better. And unfortunately, that resulted in trying to do what a lot of other employers have done is knee-jerk react. Everyone's coming in 100%. We proved to you that how successful we've been for 2 years. What's the shift? And the reality is that people that are in the commercial world, they don't want to see a crash come down on the commercial industry. And that's a realistic concern. I get it. But let's think differently. What can we do with that space? How can we maximize it? How can we make extra revenue using that space? Can we rent it out for events? Can we, now that people are having events again, there's so many opportunities. Can you sell it and rent it out top few floors? Think differently. Be creative. If it fails, fail fast. Don't sit on it and dwell on it. But people have to realize that, listen to your employees. Listen to what they're saying. We always say we want employee engagement. Well, if you ignore what they're saying, why do you expect them to be more engaged? Listen to them. You may not give them the answer they want. Sorry, you can't have 5 days fully remote. But guess what? We're going to do a hybrid. You can do 2 or 3 days and you can choose. Just communicate it weekly. Set expectations, set guidelines. Like any policy that HR creates in the workforce, create structure around it. Create, do's and don'ts. Help educate. Have meetings to answer any questions that might be in their heads. This is all going to help. And the reality is, if you're, as an employer, not doing it, your employees can find someone that does, because there's plenty out there that are doing it.
You're 1,000% right. I think, there's an interesting dichotomy as you were talking there. I was thinking about the balance between shareholder profits and employee satisfaction. One of the things that I've seen in the most recent years is the explosion of some of these tech companies, right, to meet demand, only then later to have to cut huge portions of their staff in order to have those financial metrics that look good at, a quarterly report. And so I've got some stats for you here. I saw a nice headline that I wanted to bring up. Layoffs.fyi, a website that tracks job cuts, recently reported 32,000 tech jobs have been laid off in 2024 alone. So that does not set a really awesome trend for us as we get into this year. But it's also important to recognize that 2,062,995 workers were released by 1,189 companies during 2023. So that is a ton of jobs that were let go by these large tech organizations. Why do you think the tech space in general is so expansive and then only has to come around next quarter and say, guys, we overdid it, we have to cut back down now? Why do you think some of those metrics evolve in that space specifically?
Yeah, great question. A lot of it was the catalyst was the pandemic. Everyone had to work remotely. Everyone had to figure out how to work remotely. We don't have the technology. We need help. We need IT. The tech industry blew up. They needed people. Startups needed help. Companies needed whole departments. They needed outsource their technology to be able to do it. They needed to jump on and adapt to Teams. They didn't have Teams yet, or Zoom regularly. So there were so many jobs out there, and there was such a high need for consultants and contractors. And then people started going back to the office, and they knew how to work remotely. They knew how to work in the office. So the team's needs started dwindling, and the economy hit. Interest rates were going up. Liquidity issues in the banking industry affected other industries. It definitely had an impact where people started laying off because they had to downsize based on the economy. So between the economy, the pandemic, it was just a huge need. And then when the need didn't happen, it impacted them the most because they grew. It's kind of like when you have someone that is opening a new hotel. They might overstaff when they first hire, and then they'll dwindle down after it opens. It's not that it's a pretty similar concept.
So you mentioned the human element of human resources being incredibly important. How would you kind of attack some of these challenges that these big tech companies have when they overexpand and then have to reduce? How do you feel like those cuts impact the culture of the organization, but honestly, more importantly, the long-term trust that they have in the organization to be able to protect the most important value and resource, which is the human element of those businesses? How do you think that's impacted?
It's impacted dramatically, and it's something that, one of the solutions is hire somebody like me that understands it and cares about it, that does workforce management planning and can think futuristically. How is this going to look if we hire this many now? How's that going to look a year, 3 years, 5 years from now? How is it going to affect our reputation? Or is our reputation going to be at risk by doing these things? A lot of people get excited, they get new ideas, they knee-jerk react, and they don't think about the trend, the consequences of the ripple effect. When you have somebody that has the ability to have one of the most important skills in a leader, emotional intelligence. If the pandemic didn't prove anything, it proved that we needed to have emotional intelligence, because the people who were not emotionally intelligent, they did not look good. Some of those leaders that were doing layoffs over email, and you saw all those stories out there, it was horrible. That emotional intelligence is crucial because when you create trust, you said it earlier, trust is a key thing. When that trust is there, I've seen this happen many times. The employees understand the business decisions when they need to happen because you've been transparent. They understand the economy's happening. Look at this. Interest rates are happening. We're having issues. We're struggling. We're going to have to make some changes. They'll respect that. It's when people keep it secret and hide it and don't share what's going on. Don't share the struggles. They get blindsided. You take them along for the journey. Treat them like a human being, like a partner, because guess what? You're asking them to invest their time 100% when they're there. Why aren't you investing in them? Employees are, let's talk about the financial side a little bit. Employees are usually the greatest expense the company has. Now think about it. Technology is a pretty huge expense. Anyone who's ever invested in technology in a company knows that that's one of the major expenses too. Why is it that we do checkups? We make sure that we look at all our systems that are running properly. We have someone dedicated to checking the systems. When there's an issue, we address it immediately. We don't question, why is it doing this? This is a bad system, get rid of it. No, we try to fix it. If we put that much attention into the human beings, boy, would this be a better workplace. I mean, come on, let's think about it. Every time that you were not working, you weren't functioning 100%, if someone actually came over and said, hey, let me help you out. Let me tweak you. Let me support you. Let me take this off your plate so you can work more efficiently. These are the things that add value. And it's amazing how we think emotions don't belong in the workplace. Give me a CFO or CEO. I'll talk to them, because guess what? If you got a product out there that you're selling in the market, tell me you don't market and sell to emotional buying. Think about how many people market to emotional buying when you're in a supermarket or commercials, the tear jerkers to get you to we use emotion in business every single day. So don't say it doesn't belong in the workplace, because you're using it as a skill and a tool to get more money. I'm a
Yeah,
little passionate about that one.
no, I know we want to use emotion as an acquisition tool, but we want to act like it doesn't exist inside of the business, which is
Thank
an
you.
interesting dichotomy that we have to be able to deal with. And I think that creating that blend or that hybrid model, we'll go back to that, of how we can integrate emotion and the human element back into our businesses is going to be incredibly important. You know, there's an article that I found that talks about 5 workplace trends to prepare for in 2024. And I want to kind of walk you through these and get your opinion and your feedback on these. Trend number 1 is redefining the employee experience. So only 29% of those surveyed in this study, in this article, are satisfied with the steps that their company has taken to address their well-being and their mental health. According to those surveys, flexible working hours, overall mental health, and stress management are among the top areas for professionals when it comes to staying in their company long term. Now, 29% of people feel satisfied with the amount of effort that their employer is putting into that. Why do you think such a low rate is satisfied with the work that their employer is putting in, especially over the last couple of years when we've seen that mental wellness and mental health are such key priorities for an organization? Why do you think that difference is?
One difference that I know is a huge impact or a factor is leadership. They're not practicing it. They're not engaging in it, and they're not leading by example. I'll tell you right now, when I've seen leaders dive into it and make it a priority for them, boy, do the employees follow. Boy, do they follow, and it makes an impact. And when the other leaders start doing that, their teams follow. So that's the number one reason I think that impacts it. The number 2 reason that I know impacts it is people focus on, you said, the employee experience. When you ask somebody about the employee experience, I would venture to say that most of them are going to sit there and talk about, onboarding and attracting new applicants and training. That's it? The employee experience dies there? No, the employee experience is from when they start applying to when they onboard to when they get trained, work with their team, grow, learn, and get promoted maybe, and then leave, retire, maybe get fired, I don't know. But every step of that is part of the employee experience. Every person that I've ever had to let go, I did it with dignity and respect. They are already feeling bad. Why are you going to sit there and make it worse? You want people that when they leave your company, if I was running a company, I would make sure that every person I interacted with walked away with the best experience possible, even if it was a negative situation, because they're possibly an ambassador for you. They're going to talk about your company. Do you want to say they're irrational, emotional, and make bad decisions? Or do you want to say, you know what, they're a good business person, they had to make tough decisions, but they're respectful? You know, it's so simple, yet people forget. And so again, going back to how much are you investing in your employees? Are you just checking off the box to say you did it? Or actually you looking at the whole journey and evaluating it? Because when those superstars that you've had with the company for 10 years stop feeling valued, guess what? They're going to look somewhere else. So it's making sure that even though you think people are happy, still checking in on them as a human being to make sure, because again, some people are private. They're not going to volunteer information.
You're 100% right. And part of that, that trend of only 29% of those surveyed feel satisfied with the amount of effort when it comes to a mental health support perspective is really interesting to me, because I feel like because mental health and mental wellness have been such buzzwords in the space, a lot of organizations have treated those as policies and procedures. Right? We're going to create a policy that talks about work from home days or mental health days, or you have access to resources, but they're not really a part of the ingrained culture of the organization. So it's like, go ahead and take advantage of those resources, but like, what resources do we really have? And are they actually a feasible part of my day-to-day operation from a mental wellness perspective? I feel like a lot of organizations are missing that.
Absolutely. And I'll say, one thing I failed to mention with the leadership, leading by example, was before the pandemic, when I was really trying to get people to understand the value of the mental, physical, and financial wellness in the workplace, my niece, she was, I think, 16 at the time, she said, why don't you share your story? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, your story about your car accident and how and having anxiety and dealing with that. I'm like, I don't know. Like, why would people listen to you if you're not willing to share that it worked for you? And I'm like, damn it, you're right. So thank God for the wisdom of the youth, because I went up there and we had a staff meeting and I talked about mental wellness, and I was sharing pictures of people that people knew had mental wellness, Robin Williams, Kate Spade, but then I started sharing people like Kristen Bell, Ryan Reynolds, people who have come out, and there's other people that I'm not thinking of right now, but people who come out and shared their struggles and showed that they're still successful. It didn't stop them. And so when I thought about that, I said, let me share my story. And so I shared my story. Other employees shared their stories. I can tell you how valuable that was and how meaningful, and what people came up and said. But what I saw was really powerful and meaningful was when the pandemic hit. We had employees reaching out, all of us that shared, they were reaching out to us saying, oh my God, I think I'm dealing with what you're dealing with. How do I handle it? I don't know. How did you get over it? And, a lot of conversations was, okay, well, you don't get over it. You learn how to manage it. You learn how to, you do certain tools, exercises to help you manage it. And also you start recognizing the signs before it hits you, head on, so you can avoid it sometimes. So many rich conversations came out of that. And that just grew the participation, the involvement, and understanding of the value of a wellness program. And like I said, if you're looking at, as an employer, at a wellness program as, oh, we had 80% participation, we're great. That is great. Don't get me wrong, that's phenomenal. But that's not the results. The results are what happened to them. Year 2, we had 3 people lose over 100 pounds. 6 people quit smoking. We had 2 people are no longer diabetic, and 1 person is no longer taking high blood pressure medication. And we avoided 5 surgeries just after year 2. That grew after more. That was success, because I knew people were actually practicing it. They were using it, and they were saying thank you, and they were grateful, and they were encouraging others. So what happened was the wellness program didn't become a program; it became part of the culture. People were going to get their annual physicals, and they were excited about it, not nervous. Like, oh, I'm going for my annual physical again. It came out good. Or, oh, I have to work on this, a little thing. And we would support each other. People were like, they knew that this person should be eating, carbs right now, or they needed to cut back on their red meats. And when they're eating, we were like, hey, don't forget, like, oh, you're right. And we would encourage each other. It wasn't a negative thing. It was a positive thing. And so that's the importance of having that in there, because you have to make sure that you are living it, practicing it, and being vulnerable. It's hard for a leader to share that because they think, oh, it's a sign of weakness. I'm sorry. What I've dealt with, I'm stronger because of it today, and I'm confident that I've been able to help others because of what I went through, and I'm a better HR person for it.
I saw Gary Vaynerchuk talking about in one of his pieces of content recently on Instagram or somewhere like that. He said the best managers are actually mentors. And that really stuck with me, because it's like a manager has so much experience that they can lead somebody through the journey that they've been through and give them insights and guidance. And now that's a perfect transition into our trend number 2, which is bridging the divide between leaders and employees. Now, this is really important because we touched on this a little bit in kind of our answer to number 1, but being able to be vulnerable and start conversations around commonality, I think, is incredibly important. And that's one of the favorite things that, the work that we do here at FRANSiS. We had a recent story, HR director from a hospital system, right, reached out to us and said, we've enjoyed receiving our daily text messages from FRANSiS because they're conversation starters. When I go and sit down with my team at lunch, people start sharing their text, and they say, this is what it meant to me. And it creates a conversation around the table around commonalities of experience. And I think that's incredibly important, because there's always been a divide between leadership. There's been a glass ceiling, if you will, between managers and employees below them. But blurring that divide is incredibly important, because working in itself is our other human experience. We spend so much time of our day and our lives working. Why would it not be a family experience at the same time? And I love being able to kind of create the vulnerability opportunities and create those conversations to create that commonality and eliminate that divide between different levels of leadership.
No, absolutely. I think, when you do that, it allows people to see who you are as a person and a human being. When I first, one of my CEOs started working with him, and, he's, a little, every CEO can be intimidating just for the title. So I'm, trying to get to know him and everything, and we're talking about business, and then something happened on the radio. We were in the car, and they mentioned something about Star Trek. And I saw his eyes, like, oh. And he said, oh. I'm like, do you like Star Trek? He's like, oh, yeah, just a little bit. I go, no, I love Star Trek. He's like, oh, really? And boy, his demeanor changed. He opened up. He started sharing, and he saw the excitement. That connection opened up doors to us having other conversations. Now, imagine if you did that with your employee. How valuable that is. When they're sharing something, especially, you talk about commonality, and I always caution people, don't always take over someone's story by sharing your story. Add to their story. And when I say that is, someone's struggling with that, saying, you know what, I've experienced something similar. I get that. How are you doing? Have you followed up with the doctor or whatever the case may be? Those commonalities build trust. They build a strong relationship of someone who understands them. When someone understands you, that's powerful. You feel like you can go to them and be more vulnerable. And when leaders do that, again, it takes away the stigma of your title. Look, I'd be remiss if I did not say that the title VP of HR or any HR title is going to make someone nervous if I say, do you have a minute to talk to me? I don't care who you are. So you say those words to somebody, they're like, is everything okay? Am I in trouble? I have to be conscious of that. I'm not going to abuse that and use that as an intimidation factor to add fear into the workplace. No, I'm going to use that as an ability to know that this title is respected, and with that respect and that title comes a lot of responsibility. And part of that responsibility is having your employees feel comfortable approaching you. That is not their job. It's your job to do that. And I think one of the ways you do that is by opening up and being vulnerable. And again, is there such a thing as sharing too much? Absolutely. Please, you're a leader. Know your place. I don't want to know everything that you tried in college. No, don't, that's too much. There's a fine line between sharing appropriately and sharing, inappropriately. So I think having those barriers knocked down can provide such value and trust. And I've got to tell you, any leader out there that says, oh, I have the key to earning trust like that, I'd say, no, it's a little bit harder than that.
One of the next topics that I want to talk about is the use of performance reviews. So performance reviews across the landscape of business has always been looked at as kind of a scary thing, right? But one of the things that I found interesting about this article, the third trend, was turning performance reviews on its head. And it said only 1/3 of professional surveys say that they value, actively participate in, and use performance reviews for improvement. So that's an interesting statistics. 1/3 of people participate in these improvement reviews and use them as a way to review and improve their overall work. Why do you think that number is so low? Do you think it's a cultural element of what performance reviews have been looked at as? Or why do you think that number is so low?
It's a combination of the frequency and the fact that there's a lack of conversation and engagement around it. So for example, growing up in my career, I can't tell you how many reviews that I got that were, here's your review, look it over and sign it. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, looks good, sign, done. And that's on the years I did get reviews. Some years, as the HR person in charge of doing the reviews for the entire company, ironically, the person that sometimes got left out was me. Go to the CEO, like, hello, my review is like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. You're doing fine. No, I need feedback. I welcome the feedback. But here's the thing. If you do a review annually, I'm going to call you a dinosaur. I am. I'm sorry, because it's not effective. And honestly, think about this. How many times have you had the experience where it's your annual review and you get your review and they're like, well, you didn't get this accomplished and that accomplished and this accomplished. So that's why I had to rate you lower on those areas. I thought I was on target for these. What happened? When you don't have that communication, you're setting them up for failure. All right. Now, what I've done, and it's been successful in the past, is the frequency. So formally, at least quarterly, you're going to meet with your employees to talk about their progress and their goals. The goals is the key. You're going to put their goals into a project management system or a tracking system in Excel if you need to, whatever works for you, so that when you meet, you can talk about the progress. The employee is going to update monthly. Just an update. Notes, hey, this is what I've accomplished this month. This is what I still need to do. Nothing too strenuous. But doing that, and then you have meetings. Now, say you have one-on-ones bi-weekly, monthly, weekly. Great opportunities to bring it up there on a consistent basis. Say you bring it up every month. When you sit there with the employee, talk about what's going well and what areas to focus on. But spend the majority of time about, okay, how are you doing on the goals for this year that you're actually working on? Where are you having challenges? I see this is going well. What's the hold up on this one? Let's talk about that and learn. And when they share their strategy, their struggles, their concerns, and you can provide them real-time advice and feedback, that's where you're going to see performance success. That's where I've seen the goals achieved, not on time, early. But like majority of the people have achieved their goals early now, and they picked up new goals. But not only that, they were more confident, they were able to participate more, and the overall ratings were going up. And the people that were not, it was a very clear, evident opportunity to say, hey, you're not catching this. Let's do some retraining. Let's set some action plans to help you get back on track. Not, oh, we're going to ding you and ding you. No. Use the annual review to get overall year performance. That's great. But use these quarterly, monthly check-ins to help them on their progress. Find out, oh, wow, this economic change that's happening recently is going to impact your goal. We need to revise that. But guess what? If you didn't have that conversation at the end of the year, oh, sorry, you didn't meet the goal. So that's the important thing is having that frequency, having the clarity, and having it documented so that employees know this is a priority and you are obligated to update us on how you're doing so that we know, and when we talk, we can address it.
I mean, the means of communication are so important because there's a direct correlation between communication and overall performance in not only your role, but the performance of the organization as a whole. And that's kind of where our number 4 trend popped in. It said catalyzing communication to improve collaboration. Just 19% of those surveyed in the study rated that the communication from their organization was excellent. Improving communication and collaboration should be a top priority for employers focused on growth, since there's a notable correlation between revenue increases last year and the ratings of communication and collaboration. And you talked about that perfectly, because I think a lot of organizations, especially leaders today, think that maybe over communication is a form of micromanagement. And where do you think that dichotomy or that line in the sand gets kind of drawn for somebody who's like, I don't want to be communicating with them too much because I want to show trust in their work, but if they're not performing, that creates opportunities of needed communication. So where does that dichotomy come from?
So communication is got to exist regardless. And the people that think, oh, I should be communicating because it could cost micromanaging. Micromanaging is telling them what to do. Communicating is sharing information. 2 different forms of communication. Don't intermingle them. Because I always tell people, I'm not a micromanager. But guess what? If you're not doing your job, you're performing badly, I'm going to micromanage you, and neither of us are going to be happy about it. None of us like that. So let's avoid that if we can. But the reality is that we have so many people that are trying to share their knowledge and communicate, but we all have different communication styles. I just did a room last week, and I just did a post yesterday about this. There are 4 predominant communication styles that we all have. And there's different words where you do a DISC assessment or other assessments, but for the most part, the categories are you have influencer communication, you have a doer, you have a thinker, and you have a connector. And what those means that the doer is that getting down to business, you see something, you get an idea, you jump on it. A thinker, you're processing the idea, you're evaluating it, you're getting your thoughts laid out and presenting them in a well thought out fashion. Connector is about communicating in a way that sees you as a human being. Don't rush into me and say, hey, I need you to do this, this, and this. No. Good morning. How was your weekend? How are you doing today? Okay, now let's get into business. And then you have the influencer that is just that positivity that comes in, that gets excited about ideas and gets people excited about ideas and shares that knowledge. All 4 of those personalities are in us. We have preferences. I have doer influencers, my preferences. I have my CFO who is a thinker and connector. Thinker doer. If I go to him and I think, oh, he's a doer, I can go to him and just rattle off ideas. No, I can't always because he's a thinker. I need to put my ideas down in writing. I like to verbally share my ideas and then share them in writing. He likes to see the ideas in writing and then talk about them verbally. If I understand that communication style, I know how to approach him. It doesn't mean I'm going to change my style permanently, no. But I'm going to tailor it because I have that thinker in me. I just need to flex the muscle a little bit and exercise a little bit and use it today. Because I always said when we did this exercise in the workplace, do not go around labeling people. Oh, you're a thinker. No, we all have them in us. When I was developing training for this and I did the exercise, I came out as a doer, stronger, influencer second. When I did it again during the training class with the attendees, my influencer was higher. I shared that with the team because I said, look, when I was working and developing this training with the team, we were in doer mode. That was our strongest muscle that we were flexing. So when I took assessment, I was in doer mode. I'm now here training you all. I'm trying to influence you all in understanding this training. My influencer mode is kicking in. So it does deviate. Leaders need to understand that. They need to understand that their approach is not always the best approach, that there are different ways of approaching things and addressing things. And when you communicate regularly, people aren't left to guessing. I always say when you don't communicate, you're basically going to create an atmosphere where people are being paid to worry, because when they don't know, they start guessing. Well, this must be happening. This must be happening. And instead of focusing on their job, they're thinking about what could be happening, when the reality is neither of those ideas are really happening, but you left them guessing. So be transparent. Don't be afraid. And your employees are going to be much more empowered to support the company's success. Financials, for example, and I'll end on this. The CEO who holds the financials and doesn't share them are the ones that tend to have struggles of employees not helping them financially, because they're spending when they're not, they're saving when they don't need to. When you explain the financials in a simple way and help people every month know where we're at, they're going to keep that in their head. So when they're making decisions about purchasing something or ordering something, they're going to make a financially responsible decision because they're more empowered and knowledgeable about what's happening in the company.
I mean, they have the power to make good decisions on the business's behalf when they are knowledgeable about what the roadmap looks like and how they can help the team get there at the end of the day. I think that's exactly important. You know,
it's like giving someone directions, saying, "Hey, meet me at this restaurant," but don't give them directions or the address.
Yeah, exactly.
They might get there eventually, but they might be late.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know, you've talked about in our last, as we were kind of going back and forth there, you were talking about your history as a trainer. And that kind of leads us into our fifth trend, which is prioritizing training and development to boost performance. So a lot of organizations kind of have the idea, from my personal perspective, that employees are supposed to handle a role, do their job tasks on a daily basis, and that is all that they're going to be doing in the organization. The best leaders have a stance in trying to help people grow within the organization so they can train and develop them to be better and to take on more responsibility. Why do you think that training and that personal development and professional development is so important for an organization?
Well, because it adds so much value on so many different levels. It helps you stay relevant. It helps you have more professional experience, train people on staff, and it helps you retain your staff. You know, and forgive me, I don't remember who said the quote, but it was train your employees so well that they can leave and treat them so well that they don't. And when you have training, you know, it's not, don't check off the box. You know, I always say when you're building training, if you have the luxury of building training in-house, or if you're having it built from an outside company, make sure you're involved, and have meetings with your teams that are going to attend it. Ask them what they would like to get from the training, how they've best received training in the past, so you can tailor it a little bit. But at the end of the day, regardless of whatever training you do, it's after you're done that really matters. Because how do you know if they retained it? How do you know if they're practicing it? How do you know if they are supporting it? And one of the things I always say is, you know, technology, innovation, stay on top of trends out there, especially in HR. We have got to make sure that we are that business partner to help the operation and the company be successful. But if we're not staying on top of trends, we're going to miss the boat. One of the trends that happened in the past 10 years is gamification of training. Bringing that, think about this, okay? I consider myself a gamer. Today, the number of gamers out there are insane. So why wouldn't we tap into that skill set or that interest? But here's the beauty of it. So I introduced it in the workplace. The CEO was like, no, that's stupid. Then he went to a meeting. They called him a dinosaur for not even thinking about it. So he came back. He's like, all right, I got called a dinosaur. Let's go ahead and try it. We tried it, and it was awesome. Now, we tried with a company that was kind of a startup. They were just starting up. They've been very successful. They're dealing with ESPN today and everything. But we wanted to give them a chance, and thank God we did. Because it was a simplistic gamification app where it was almost like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, meets, I don't know, something else. And basically what you did was you sent the training to the company, and they would formulate questions from the training into their game. And they had high upbeat music to get you excited. They made it seem like it was like, an ESPN, quiz show. And you would time each question, so you had to do it fast. At the end, you got a score. What the beauty of the analytics was, the score allowed you to see if they were retaining the information. And as they played it more and more, if the score went up, you said, hey, they're learning more. So after the training, they're playing the game and they're gaining more knowledge as they go. However, you see the employee the score hasn't grown. It's actually maybe gotten worse or stayed the same every time he's played. He's played like 15 times. I think we need to do a refresher course for this person. We need to go back and do some retraining because they didn't grasp it as well as the others. That's the beauty of it. Because again, we train everybody like, oh, we're done. They're all trained. Yeah, are they? Have you seen them practice it? Have you seen it in real life? Are they still using it? So having some way to inspect what you expect. And gamification is a great way because I love analytics. It allows you to really see what's working and what's not working. Not the only tool, but very helpful tool. So with employers, any employer that has seen the value of training, they will never leave it. The ones that have not seen the value of training, their business is going to suffer, and their clients and customers are going to suffer, and the employees are going to suffer because you're not investing in employees to grow and learn. And if they're not growing and learning, how's your company supposed to grow and learn? I mean, think about that. Our company's going to grow. How is it going to grow if your employees are not growing with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting dichotomy because it's almost like we're afraid to invest into the most valuable resource in our business, but we expect the growth to happen at the same time. And it's kind of a scary place to be in. You know, Felipe, this has been an absolute pleasure. I want to give you the last couple seconds here. If you were speaking to other HR leaders as they start kind of navigating and planning for the roadmap of 2024, what are some of the priorities that you think that they should be thinking about, and what message do you have for them?
So 2024, I'm optimistic 2024 should be better than 2023. However, with that, I think it brings a lot of opportunities. And for all the HR leaders out there, some things I want you to take away from this is, one, be that voice for your leaders to make sure that they're hearing both what's important to the business and important to the employees. You are their advocate. You're the voice at the table. If you don't speak up, they may not hear the employee's voice always. But two, be that business partner. Understand what those other business partners are doing in different departments and divisions, and figure out how what you do supports them so you can lean into that. Because when you need their support, you want theirs back. And then lastly, embrace the whole employee experience. Make sure that every level of the employee experience is valued and there's a strategy behind it. Because whether you're attracting and doing employment branding to attract new applicants, or you're making sure that the onboarding experience is top notch so that they can hit the ground running and be successful, to where they can work with others and learn and grow and get promoted, and then leave with dignity and respect how they choose to leave.
Well,
that's my message.
I think that's an incredibly important message for us to be able to chew on as we start navigating 2024 and the challenges that are surely going to be coming down the pipe. And so, Felipe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the HR Heroes series, and I think you've done an amazing job at articulating why culture, why investing into your employees, but more importantly, why the whole person health of that individual is so important for the success of 2024 and a lot of the businesses that we're leading out here today. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Keenan. It's been a delight, and I hope to have you back on the Workplace Wellness Hour with Simona Jetty and have you join us there again. It's been a while, but I love this. It's been a great thing, and I love all the work that you're doing out there. So keep it up, man. Keep it up.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Guys, thanks for tuning in again. Once again, hats off to Felipe. Thank you so much. Felipe, where can people find you if they want to learn more information about what you're doing out there?
Sure. The best way to find me is LinkedIn. That's my primary home as far as being out there. And you can find me there. I'm doing videos, posts, audio posts. I do audio rooms every week. Some with Simona Jetty, some with Melissa Houston, some with my Social Saturday chat, and then another one with Tomo. So great opportunity to engage and learn, and for me to get back and share what I know, and others to ask questions and learn from it, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that's been another episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. That's a wrap.